April 1862, Yorktown, Virginia. Union General George McClellan stood on a hill overlooking Confederate defensive positions. He had brought 120,000 men, the largest army ever assembled on American soil. He was going to march on Richmond and end the war, but first he had to get past Yorktown, and the Confederate defenses looked formidable. Through his telescope, McClellan could see Confederate artillery batteries. Dozens of cannons pointed toward Union lines. He could see Confederate troops marching, regiment after regiment moving into position, disappearing into the woods, more regiments arriving. The movement never stopped. He could hear them, bugles, drums, officers shouting orders, the sounds of a massive army preparing for battle. McClellan's intelligence officers estimated the Confederate force at 100,000 men, maybe more, far too many to attack directly, so McClellan made a decision. He would lay siege, bring up heavy artillery, bombard the Confederates into submission. It would take weeks, maybe months, but it was safer than a frontal assault against such overwhelming numbers. McClellan had just been fooled, completely and totally fooled, because the Confederate force at Yorktown was not 100,000 men. It was not 50,000, not even 20,000. It was about 10,000. The Confederate commander, General John Bankhead Magruder, had used theater tricks, painted logs, and pure showmanship to make his tiny force look 10 times larger than it was, and it worked. For an entire month, 10,000 Confederates held 120,000 Union soldiers at bay through nothing but illusion. This is the story of the Civil War's ghost army. The story of Prince John Magruder, the general who had been an actor and director before the war. And the story of how theater, psychology, and bluff became weapons as powerful as cannons. Welcome, friends. I am so glad you are here with me today. Military deception is as old as warfare itself. The Trojan horse, Sun Tzu's art of war, Hannibal's tactics at Cana. Generals have always used trickery to gain advantage. But during the American Civil War, one Confederate general took deception to an art form. Literally, General John Bankhead Magruder was a theatrical man. Before the war, he had staged plays and entertainments for Washington society. He loved drama. He loved spectacle, and when the Civil War began, he brought those skills to the battlefield. At Yorktown in April and May of 1862, Magruder faced an impossible situation. He had 10,000 men. McClellan had 120,000. Magruder could not win a fight, but he could put on a show, and that show would delay McClellan's advance for an entire month. A month that gave the Confederacy time to concentrate its armies, time to prepare Richmond's defenses. Time that may have saved the Confederate capital. Today we are going to tell the story of Magruder's masterpiece, the props, the staging, the performance, and how one man's theatrical genius fooled the most cautious general in the Union Army. If you love these stories of cleverness and creativity in warfare, I hope you will subscribe to our channel. Now, let us meet the man they called Prince John. Background: the actor general. John Bankhead Magruder was born in 1810 in Port Royal, Virginia. He graduated from West Point in 1830. He served in the Mexican War with distinction, earning 3 brevet promotions for gallantry. But Magruder's real passion was theater. In peacetime, stationed in various posts, Magruder organized theatrical productions. He acted, he directed, he designed sets. He loved the drama, the costumes, the performance. When stationed in Washington before the Civil War, Magruder became famous for his lavish parties and entertainments. He was called Prince John because of his elaborate style. He wore expensive uniforms. He gave dramatic speeches. He was, in every sense, a showman. When Virginia seceded in 1861, Magruder resigned his U.S. Army commission and joined the Confederacy. He was appointed brigadier general and given command of Confederate forces on the Virginia Peninsula. This was not a prestigious assignment. The peninsula was a backwater. Nothing important was happening there. Magruder had about 10 to 13,000 men scattered across the region. Then in April of 1862, everything changed. General George McClellan landed the Army of the Potomac at Fort Monroe, 120,000 men, the largest amphibious operation in history to that point. McClellan's goal: march up the peninsula, capture Richmond, end the war. Standing in his way was John Magruder and 10,000 Confederates. Magruder knew he could not fight McClellan, not head-on. He would be crushed, so he decided to do what he did best: put on a show. The props: Quaker guns. Magruder's first challenge was artillery, or rather the lack of it. He had maybe 2 dozen real cannons. McClellan had hundreds. If Union observers counted Confederate artillery positions, they would realize how weak Magruder's force was. So Magruder ordered his men to make fake cannons. They were called Quaker Guns. The name came from the pacifist Quakers who refused to fight. Quaker guns looked like cannons but could not fire. Confederate soldiers cut logs to the right length. They painted them black. They mounted them on wheels or wooden platforms. From a distance, through a telescope, they looked exactly like real cannons. Magruder positioned Quaker guns throughout his defensive line. He mixed them with real cannons so Union observers could not tell which was which. When a real cannon fired, it made the Quaker guns nearby seem operational too. He even had soldiers place straw dummies next to some Quaker guns, fake artillerymen, standing at attention, motionless. But from hundreds of yards away, through a telescope, they looked real. McClellan's observers counted the cannons. They reported dozens of Confederate artillery pieces. They had no idea most of them were painted logs, but Quaker guns were just the beginning. Magruder's real genius was in movement. The performance, marching in circles. Magruder understood psychology. He understood that people see what they expect to see, and he understood theater. He knew that McClellan's observers were watching his lines from distant hills. They could see Confederate troops moving, but they could not track individual soldiers. They could only see masses of men in gray uniforms, so Magruder staged a performance. He would march a regiment in view of Union observers. The regiment would march past a certain point. Maybe a gap in the trees, maybe a hill, where Union telescopes could see them clearly. Then the regiment would march into the woods, out of sight. Instead of stopping, they would loop around behind the tree line and march past the same observation point again. From the Union perspective, it looked like regiment after regiment was arriving, Confederate reinforcements pouring into Yorktown, an endless stream of gray-clad soldiers. In reality, it was the same few thousand men marching in circles. Over and over, all day long, Magruder added theatrical touches. He had buglers play calls, drummers beat march rhythms, officers rode up and down the lines shouting exaggerated orders that Union observers could hear faintly in the distance. Bring up the 5th Regiment, the 6th Division will deploy on the right. Artillery, prepare to engage. None of it was real, but it sounded real, it looked real, and McClellan believed it was real. The sound effects, audio deception. Magruder did not stop with visual deception. He used sound as well. At night, when Union observers could not see his troops, Magruder kept them working. Loudly, he had men chop wood. The sound of axes echoed across the lines. Union soldiers heard it and thought, they are building fortifications. They are preparing for a long siege. He had men drive wagons back and forth. Empty wagons, but the sound of creaking wheels and rattling cargo suggested constant resupply. Union intelligence concluded, the Confederates have ample supplies, they can hold out indefinitely. He had bands play, music drifted across no man's land, songs, marches. It suggested confidence, high morale, a well-supplied, well-rested army. All of it was theater, designed to create an impression, to make McClellan think he faced a force much larger and better prepared than the reality. And it worked. McClellan's caution, the perfect mark. George McClellan was perhaps the perfect target for Magruder's deception. McClellan was brilliant at organization, at training, at logistics. He had turned the Army of the Potomac into a well-drilled, well-equipped fighting force, but McClellan had a fatal flaw. He was overcautious. He consistently overestimated enemy strength. He always wanted more men, more supplies, more time, and he relied heavily on intelligence reports. When his observers told him there were 100,000 Confederates at Yorktown, he believed them. McClellan decided to lay siege. He brought up heavy artillery. He built elaborate siege works. He prepared for a methodical bombardment that would take weeks. Lincoln was frustrated. He sent messages urging McClellan to attack. "You have over 100,000 men," Lincoln wrote. "Attack them." But McClellan would not. He saw the Confederate artillery. He heard the sounds of a massive army. He believed he was outnumbered. He chose caution for an entire month, from early April to early May. McClellan besieged Yorktown, and for an entire month Magruder held him with theater tricks and painted logs. The Confederate escape, May 4, 1862. By early May, the Confederate High Command realized Yorktown could not be held indefinitely. McClellan's siege artillery was in position. When the bombardment began, the real Confederate defenses would crumble quickly. General Joseph E. Johnston, now in command of Confederate forces on the peninsula, ordered a withdrawal. On the night of May 3 to May 4, Johnston evacuated Yorktown. Magruder covered the retreat. His men slipped away in the darkness. They left the Quaker guns behind. They left the straw dummies. They left empty camps with fires still burning. When Union troops advanced on May 4th, they found Yorktown abandoned, and they found the truth. Logs painted black, straw men in gray uniforms, defensive positions that had never been fully manned. McClellan had been fooled. For a month, 10,000 Confederates had held 120,000 Union soldiers at bay through nothing but showmanship. The impact, a month that changed the war. That month mattered. When McClellan finally advanced from Yorktown in May, he moved slowly, cautiously, still convinced he faced overwhelming numbers. The Peninsula Campaign dragged on for months. McClellan got within 5 miles of Richmond, but he never captured it. The 7 days battles in late June drove him back. The Confederacy survived. Richmond remained the capital. The war would continue for 3 more years. Would McClellan have captured Richmond if he had attacked Yorktown in early April instead of laying siege? We will never know, but Magruder's deception bought time for Johnston to concentrate forces, time for Robert E. Lee to assume command, time for the Confederacy to organize its defense of Richmond. One general, 10,000 men, painted logs, marching in circles, theater tricks, and it delayed the largest army in American history for an entire month. Magruder's later career. After Yorktown, Magruder continued to serve the Confederacy, but his theatrical style did not always serve him well. During the 7 days battles, Magruder's performance was erratic. He was exhausted. He may have been taking medication that affected his judgment. His attacks were poorly coordinated. Robert E. Lee, now commanding the Army of Northern Virginia, lost confidence in Magruder. In October 1862, Magruder was transferred to command the District of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, far from the main action. Magruder served in Texas for the rest of the war. On January 1, 1863, he recaptured Galveston from Union forces in a daring amphibious assault. It was his last significant victory. After the war, Magruder briefly fled to Mexico. He returned to the United States in 1867. He died in 1871 at the age of 61, but his masterpiece remains Yorktown, the month when an actor-general used theater to fool the Union Army. Reflection: deception as a weapon. Friends, Magruder's deception at Yorktown teaches us something important about warfare. Numbers are not everything. Firepower is not everything. Sometimes perception matters more than reality. McClellan had every advantage: more men, more guns, more supplies. He should have crushed Magruder in days, but Magruder changed McClellan's perception. He made 10,000 men look like 100,000. He made weakness look like strength. He made a vulnerable position look impregnable. And perception became reality. McClellan acted as if he faced a massive force. So Magruder's tiny force achieved the same result a massive force would have: delay. This is the power of deception in warfare. It is not about lying. It is about shaping your enemy's understanding of the battlefield, making them see what you want them to see, making them act the way you want them to act. Magruder understood this. He understood that war is as much psychological as physical. That fear and caution can be as effective as bullets and shells. The Quaker guns did not fire a shot, but they influenced McClellan's decisions just as much as real cannons would have. As we close today, I want you to picture that scene one more time. April 1862. George McClellan on a hill, looking through his telescope at Confederate positions. He sees cannons. He sees troops marching. He hears bugles and drums and officers shouting orders. He sees an army, but it is an illusion: painted logs, soldiers marching in circles, theater. Behind the curtain, John Magruder stands like a director on opening night, watching his performance unfold, watching the audience. McClellan react exactly as planned. For 1 month, Magruder's show runs, and it is the performance of a lifetime. 10,000 men holding off 120,000, not with guns, not with fortifications, but with creativity, with audacity, with pure theatrical brilliance. The ghost army of the Confederacy. No one called it that at the time, but that is what it was. An army that existed more in perception than in reality. An army conjured from painted logs and marching feet and bugle calls. And it worked. Friends, if this story fascinated you, please share it. Magruder's deception at Yorktown is one of the most brilliant psychological operations in military history. And tell me in the comments, had you heard of Prince John Magruder before? What do you think about using deception in warfare? I read every comment and I love learning from you. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time. Keep their memory alive.